Hey, what's up, everybody? Obviously, different setup due to being on the road. We did the Collegiate Contender Series here at Wisdom Studios in Blooming something, Minnesota. Supers over there.
Bloomington is correct.
I was right the first time. Let's go. Mall of America is where we've been at. So we were out of town. We also got to do the Version 1 broadcast in person, which was awesome. But as you guys know, it's Monday, so it's time for a recap video. We've got our first official regional of the year. Don't forget, they're the Fall Open Cup Invitational, so this is the Fall Open for North America. We also had the qualifiers and stuff this weekend for Europe. If you guys would like me to cover that in like tomorrow's video or the next video, let me know in the comments down below. It makes it real easy. I'm going to blow through these pretty quickly just because Swiss stage, there's 33 best of fives, and then we've got all the rounds. That was weird. For the playoffs, so there's noises going on. The place is haunted. I don't know what's going on. Either way, pretty much as expected, I would say. The biggest surprise for me in the Swiss stage is that Complexity did not qualify. They went all the way to the 5th round where they lost to Optic. But other than that, I would say things as standard. Shopify definitely playing up to their competition, I would say. I didn't think Shopify should have ever been a 16th seed or outside of the top 16, I should say, for qualifiers. Like, they should have been an auto bid playing in Swiss. But it's difficult for the people seeding because they don't get to hear about scrims or any of that kind of stuff. If they are of capability, when you have a new roster, you don't get to see two-piece on the field. And that's kind of the narrative of this entire regional, is it's the first look at all these new rosters, what they're going to be. Gen.g, a team that doesn't literally have any scrim results. They never scrimmed together before signing their contracts. And like, yeah, we're moving to the United States / North America. So the only experience they've gotten has been in-game. So they're obviously going to get better as time progresses. And a little bit of reservation. Furia, after switching over to Miami, also not as much practice, so as they get more reps in, they're going to look better. So a couple of those conversations, but ones I really enjoy is the narrative with CRR being a massive impact, but with nerves and pressure on the line, are they going to be performing as well as they did? And then you've got all these new up-and-coming teams like Axel, which is the former Oxygen team, now with Ajax from United. You've got Dignitas looking pretty dang solid. Luminosity, Rogue, Soul, all across the board. There's a pretty tough competition. During the broadcast, while Super and I were looking at like the Swiss developing in rounds 3, 4, 5, you're like, this is what's left in the lowers? I don't want to be in any of those matches. So it's been extremely competitive, but some things remain consistent. G2 3-0, they only drop an individual game to FaZe. Space Station 3-0 with LJ looking better and better. Their execution was the concern, so they've been playing quite well. They dropped a game to Shopify as well as Furia. Gen.g 3 over Energy, 3 over Dignitas, 3-1 to Axel. Their only loss coming to FaZe, so they're invading, is all I'm saying. Soon enough, NA is going to be 0 North American players, and it's just going to be EU and South American imports, which I welcome. Why not? Melting pot in the United States. Heck, I'm all about it. Some new faces, Shopify Rebellion in there. Same record as FaZe Clan as expected. V1 had a really rough day. Speaking about it personally, not to call it any like one individual player, but they definitely looked off. One player was definitely having some struggles, and because of those struggles, the like trust started to fall off, which means another player is trying to make up for things, and it creates double commits and ugliness. Despite that ugliness, they still make it into the playoffs, which is, I think, the important thing. Guaranteeing yourself top 8 every single time at least keeps you in the running. So 2 weeks to kind of adjust and bounce back for them. And then the last 2 to come in were Furia and Optic, which means there is no NRG. Some pretty tough tweets coming out from Garrett and saying, at least you guys were right and stuff, which never is what you want to see. Even though you're seeing a decline in energy, you never want to see a long-standing vet, as well as one like Garrett and the rest of those guys have to face the adversity. So, again, 2 regionals to bounce back. It's going to be an uphill battle for them. On the other side of things, Pittsburgh Knights being super competitive, playing pretty well in some of their matchups. They start with an upset over Optic, which is pretty cool. Dignitas also playing well. They start with a win over NRG, just like they did in qualifiers, I'm pretty sure. And then the big one, after Rogue looks so good in qualifiers, they go 0-9. They don't win in a single game. They lose to Shopify, they lose to Energy, and they lose, or not 0-9. They go, what, 2-9? So they got 2 wins. They went to game 5 against Complexity, while Complexity started warming up towards their tail end. So Rogue, tough losses after having such a good showing in the top 16 qualifier. So Your 8 teams that make it into the bracket, and the matches are as follows: are G2 versus Furia, you've got FaZe versus Shopify, Space Station versus Optic, and then gen.g versus V1. Starts off G2 and Furia, and G2 looks like the best team in North America still out of the gate. Furia, I think, is still going to take some time to find their footing, but these were close games, 1-goal games across the board until the timeout from the South American imports, where they then win 3-0, 3-2, and bring it to a game 6. But usually it's every 3 that you see those adjustments to which G2 is able to bounce back. FaZe Clan versus Shopify, a lot of interest for me in this series, primarily just because I want to see what Shopify is going to do against some of these top tier. Even though they did qualify in the Swiss portion, they beat Rogue, they beat Dig, they go up against Space Station, who they lose to, who I think is like a top 3, like solidified. They go against a struggling V1 and they beat them pretty handedly. And then other than that, I haven't really seen them play any like strength of schedule matches. And when they finally go up against one like FaZe, who I consider like a guarantee for major, they end up losing. So 4-2 in favor of FaZe. A couple defensive things they need to work on. And when they get behind, they struggle quite a bit. Some big shutouts. When they get the goals going, they start to come pretty easily, and a lot of credit in that to Memory and 2Piece. That's not to say that Parth isn't helpful, but Memory, I just don't think he gets enough credit, and 2Piece has really changed the way their offense works. They've provided a lot of consistency, a lot of different looks rather than boom ball downfield, hope for a redirect. It's been consistent offense and sustained offense, which is awesome. You then go to Space Station versus Optic, which what better thing do you want for a narrative and storylines? It ends up being Space Station taking the win 4-1, convincing. I've been hearing nothing but good things. Some of it biased because it's from the coach of Space Station, and some of it from other players in the space, but Space Station's been clapping people in scrims. Cool to see them translate that as well. Top 4 for their first as a guarantee is a pretty good feeling for them after the change, and to do it against their former player. You no longer have 2 teammates butting heads about how they should approach the game, which then is just about enabling and making your new player feel comfortable, which LJ definitely does. So stopping that Optic offense and keeping them below 2 goals every single game is, I think, really important. But Space Station's still trying to identify how to play that aggressive play style. They struggle against teams like Complexity, believe it or not, but everybody's been getting clapped by Complexity, I guess, in scrims, and Space Station being able to translate their own scrims onto the field. So 4-1, but you're talking every game but one is a 1-goal game. There's 2 overtimes in there as well, and they're pretty much ended after like a kickoff, like within the first 20-30 seconds. So pretty close series in that regard. So it could have went the other way, but Space Station closing out and showing to be clutch. And then we go to our last quarterfinal, where V1 plays like Cheeks, and the issues that are plaguing them are continued to be there. gen.g ends up coming out and losing the first game. It's a 1-0. Super close game against V1. Probably should have won that one, actually. And then they come back. It's a 1-0 game. And then 5-0. And some of those glaring issues start to show. V1 takes a timeout. Doesn't matter. 4-1, 3-2. At least they put up a fight in the end. But yeah, V1 definitely going through some struggles this week. We did talk to Com. He says that he was feeling kind of flat. Ironically enough, he used Torment's controller at one point. He's like, I feel so slow, and apparently it's still plaguing him. So I think Com is kind of in his own head right now, mentality-wise, but they'll be able to bounce back. I think Torment played pretty heroic on defense as usual, and Beast Mode tried to do as much as he could. But again, team effort nowadays. You can't just have 2 players doing well. It's got to be some consistency. And when things are off and all your clears are like kind of falling in front of your net, it's not going to go well. So that happens, and a lot of people are then like, uh-oh, EU team in top 4, is all of NA still shit? And the answer is yes. gen.g ends up winning against Space Station after Space Station's supposed to be this great new super team. They also beat Space Station 4-1, which I think is pretty funny. Jokes aside, though, it is a pretty close series until the very end where gen.g starts to run away with it. 4-1, 4-0 in those last 2, but a bunch of 1-goal games, 2 overtimes, pretty close series overall. And on the other side, FaZe Clan with Mist is what I talked about in Roster Royale when we saw it. It's like they don't really have any growing pains. He's fit in perfectly. He's averaging more points a game than most people. I think he's like more than First Killer even though First is still continuing to pop off, which we'll talk about in just a bit. But they come in as a new roster and beat G2 4-1, which I think is pretty convincing across the board. That's something of note, in my opinion. that if you come in and beat G2 like that, that is something to be concerned about. So if anything, when you're at the top, it's harder to stay at the top, and now they're going to be able to find adjustments and get used to, because a lot of these teams are not used to playing these teams or what they look like in game, because scrims are only like a fundamental check. Are we rotating well? Are we hitting passes? Are we, mechanically okay? But when you're on the field and there's pressure, teams do play differently. So getting used to what phase is on game day versus phase and scrims is going to be a bit different. So excited to see the growth of these teams like Space Station, G2, etc. And then we go to the grand final. You got FaZe with Mist. Everybody obviously concerns about, hey, you got rid of AJ. What's it going to look like? I don't think any of us realize exactly what it can always translate to, but I think a lot of us do believe that Mist is better than AJ for certain reasons. I always thought that there was an issue with overlap between AJ and First Killer. It was too much of the same. And now you've got a person who's still great on offense, but also facilitates the mid better than most people in North America, and still has killer defense because he's forced to do it all the time on Envy. So I think FaZe is the real deal. I think they look really, really good. I talked about them quite a bit and have been talking about them up ever since I saw them in roster royale with my own eyes, and there's something about that team that looks absolutely incredible. So FaZe, that's 2 back-to-back wins. The off-season tournament they won, and now the actual regional. So power rankings right now in my brain, FaZe is number 1, and I think there's a reason why. So gen.g did put up a pretty decent fight, but they got shut out in 3 of those games. So FaZe's midfield pressure continues to just make me appreciate their playstyle. Rold is going to be really happy with his decision to leave casting and be like, hey, I'm gonna go join this FaZe team, and is rewarded for it. So gen.g though, Europe coming over and top 2 in NA and 1. It only took 1 event, guys. Come on NA, figure it out. So that's what we got for the recap. We've got 2 weeks until NA again, but we've got EU coming up next. If you guys would like me to do covering of EU top 16 qualifiers and stuff this week before I do my power rankings and tier list and all that kind of stuff like I did for NA, let me know in the comments below. But with that said, Super, any last words?
Gen.g lives in North America. They're NA now. EU didn't come over. Yay, NA.
Take all the backup we can get. Either way, that's going to do it for today's video. As always, if you guys enjoyed the content, like, subscribe, notifications, and we'll be back in the studio tomorrow. Hopefully we see you in chat. Peace.